Masonic and Kabbalistic Symbols in the Washington, D.C. Map, Chapter 2, The Legend of the Royal Arch. In Chapter 1, I presented my primary thesis that the D.C. planners used more than one template for the map, those being Metatron's Cube, the Great Pyramid, and the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. The 13-circle cube layout was compared to the layout of the 13 stars in the Great Seal, and it was noted that the capital is located north of where it should be. It was pointed out that the triangles and the other features in the map have been shortened in order to mimic the Great Pyramid cross-section. In Chapter 2, I want to look at the Masonic significance of that cube. We do this by examining the legend of the Royal Arch, which is the crown jewel of Masonry. You'll note that Old and New Testament stories tie into this as well. All legends that involve Enoch are Kabbalistic legends. The main Kabbalistic themes are the transmission and preservation of knowledge and the journey of the soul. The legend about the columns tells us that Enoch was warned of the flood and told to build two structures, one brick and one stone, on which to encode the sum of human knowledge. Enoch is the archetype of symbolic architecture and of symbolism in general. The meaning of this story is simple. Architecture works on more than one level, and structures reflect the cultures that build them. Intentionally, that is. Architects are symbologists. The Royal Arch story involves both astronomy and cosmology, which I will attempt to interpret. Hebrews and Muslims begin the day at sundown, as the sun symbolizes the soul and the earth symbolizes the body. The conjoining of the two at sunset represented incarnation on the physical plane. They celebrate the new year near the fall equinox for the same reason. The sun is entering the southern hemisphere, which is seen as analogous to the sunset. The fall celebration commemorates the beginning of the world and occurs at the new moon near the equinox. At one point in the Jewish ceremony, the priest would go into the Holy of Holies in the temple, a cubic space, and with the crowd outside making noise, he pronounces the name of God. The need for the crowd noise stems from the belief that the name of God helped create the world, and that it helped sustain it, and that it need not fall into the wrong hands. There is lots of magical thought in Temple Judaism. The idea of making sure that the true name of God gets passed on correctly is a grand Kabbalistic theme. In our story, the problem arises when the temple was destroyed and the ceremony could no longer be performed there. The idea is that after years in captivity, the pronunciation of the true name of God was forgotten. According to the legend, Enoch had been ordered to excavate 9 apartments or chambers, and to hide in the last of these a cube on which is inscribed a triangle bearing the true name of God. Upon the occasion of preparing to undergo the building of the second temple, Enoch's work is discovered along with the cube and the name. The problem about a literal interpretation of this is that you could never figure the proper pronunciation from the written word. Commander Clausen, in his commentaries on Morals and Dogma, says of the cube and the triangle that the cube represents matter and the triangle divinity, and the triangle on the cube represents the divine spark in matter, the soul, if you will. The notion of the scattering and gathering of these sparks reminds us of alchemy and Hasidism, the motto of which is E pluribus unum, from many one. The Jewish creation story entails the separation of the source from the creation, man from God, and man from woman. Kabbalistically, the creation, the soul, the world, the universe are all depicted as a bride separated from her husband, that is, a sexual metaphor. The bride is given the name Shekinah and is depicted as a cube, the cube that we see in the Holy of Holies and in Revelation 21, the New Jerusalem. The Shekinah is the earthly presence of the Lord, depicted as columns in the desert, as residing in the ark, and in the Holy of Holies as well as the New Jerusalem. She is visualized as a cube, stone, or star that fell from heaven. The fall of the soul and of creation are seen as parallel stories. The creation takes place in 7 days that just so happen to be named after celestial bodies: Saturn's day, the sun's day, the moon's day. The ancient legend of the soul's journey sounds similar, in that the soul is supposed to have come from and returned to the Milky Way, the stars, the heavens, or heaven, via 7 planetary spheres. Including the stars at the top and the Earth at the bottom, we get a total of 9 spheres. Adding the 4 direction markers to the 9 spheres produces Metatron's cube. Manly P. Hall suggests that the 9 worlds image illustrates a Nordic cosmology, that it describes an initiation with 9 degrees, and that it points to the location of this initiation. Albert Pike says the same thing in relationship to the Royal Arch legend. He suggests that the 9 chambers represent the 9 degrees of an initiation and the locations in which the initiations were given, and that the number 9 was cosmologically related. While it is true that the Scottish Rites did not exist as they are now in 1791 and 92 when the initial DC planning was being done, the so-called higher degrees were already being instituted in lodges in the U.S. According to Brent Morris, the first high degree to appear in America was the Royal Arch degree, first conferred in December of 1753. At the Fredericksburg, Virginia Lodge, where George Washington was initiated as an entered apprentice in 1752. I'm suggesting that the symbolism that we see in the seal and the map plan belong to the Royal Arch and not Craft Masonry. I'm also suggesting that the people who designed the city were the same individuals who helped form the Scottish Rites and moved it to Washington, D.C.